This is kind of surprising. Draw and off-site she's not a non-profit. See her business. Yeah, exactly. Because that's what I think happened.
I didn't bring it either.
But thank you for helping, or trying, at least trying. Awesome, great.
Going the wrong way, David.
I don't know which way it goes. There we are. That's one of those guys that won those back on the event farm.
Oh, okay, all right.
That's Debbie. Congratulations.
Hey, how you doing?
That's just a tease. It is.
I gave you some M&Ms in, so we'll sure get some of those. It's good. I'm not going to go on my wall. You have to go this way? No, I got it.
Chairman, we are live. Ready when you are.
Thank you. I'm going to wait for Mr. Mark to come on back down here. Supervisor Mark, as soon as you get some things. So be it resolved that it is to the best of board members' knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempt from open meeting requirements and only such matters as are identified in the motion to go into closed session were heard, discussed, or considered during this closed session. Watch the roll call vote.
Do I have a second? Do I have a second?
Second.
Ms. White, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Stein?
Yes.
Dr. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Clinton?
Yes. Now, if we can, if I can ask Mr. Martin to say the pledge of allegiance, of course, that'd be fantastic. Would you join in the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. One of the things that I want to make sure is that we all put our phones on mute when we are asked to speak in the microphone, get a little bit closer to the microphone if we would. And this brings us to a moment of silence, if you can. Certainly our country's in disarray, and so I ask that for those individuals, especially Americans in Afghanistan, that we pray for safety return, and hopefully they will return, and those individuals in Afghan that are being, under the thumbs of the Taliban, that I ask you to pray for them as well. Also, please think of us, the board, just the decisions we have to make, and the right decisions we need. Thank you. One of the things, if we start off with some of the recognitions, the first one we have is Regional EMS Award, and Mr. Ferguson, Steve. Chief Ferguson.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. With me today, I have Steve Simon. You may have known him as Chief Simon when he was Chief of Roanoke County Fire Rescue. He's here as the Executive Director of the Western Virginia EMS Council, which is the region that we serve in the state EMS councils, as well as our district representative for the council, Gene Dahl.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you for allowing us to come here. It's a great moment for y'all's county. You had 4 recipients that won the Regional EMS Awards. Just real quick about Western Virginia EMS, we represent about 18 counties and 4 cities in Western Virginia. We provide EMS management support and some of the things that are most closely noted when people ask, hey, what do you do? All those protocols that your paramedics and EMTs operate under and all the drug boxes are coordinated through our office. So we have a large footprint from West Virginia down to North Carolina line, and all the way down to the Pulaski area. So in recognition of these awards, I think that should be noted that it is a large area. These awards are voted upon the peers. I'm the executive director, but I don't have to say it. It's the nomination process goes up through a detailed process that we have where people that have won the awards in past years are the actual individuals that choose who will win them currently. So they know what it took to get there. The second phase of this is the Governor's Award. EMS Governor's Awards will be presented in November at the EMS Symposium. And we as a council will push these nominations forward, which we've already done, and try to go and make sure they get the best review so they can win a Governor's Award, which is very prestigious in the EMS. There were 4 winners. 2 of them are here with us today. We did do a small presentation where we were able to have a county administrator, assistant county administrator, Chief Ferguson, at the Reed Mountain Station earlier. So there was some little bit of publicity, because I think they were excited, we were excited to be able to present. But once again, 4 awards is really astonishing. Chief Ferguson, you want to make any comments or anything?
I just think overall, 2020 was quite a year. We know that we're all experiencing challenging times with that, but a lot of these awards are to folks that seize the opportunity for a year of crisis to make positive change and impact in the community as well as the department as a whole. So the men and women standing alongside of myself and others, as well as some of the photographs that you'll see, certainly deserve the recognition, and we're very thankful and humbled to be given that honor.
One of the first awards, and this is usually something that most people will contact the EMS system and how it's activated, is the 911 center. And the first award was to Nicole Mansfield, Outstanding Telecommunications Dispatcher. She started out in Botetourt County Sheriff's in 1999, was promoted up in 2011 as the Supervisor. So she's the person that actually makes sure everything gets done there. And I can tell you from my experience from Roanoke County, we never had an issue with their dispatch center. They're always great to work with. So from a personal level, I know she ran a top shift. So with that, we have an award for her. It's your opportunity.
I dedicate this to all of the 911 dispatchers. They are the heroes behind the heroes. And folks are very quick to thank the firemen, the EMTs, the paramedics, the sheriff's department when they come. But a lot of times they forget about the dispatchers. So I accept this on their behalf.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next 2 awards, these individuals could not be present, but we did present them the awards at the fire station. But I did want to make reference to them. Daniel Murray, Outstanding Contribution to EMS Emergency Preparedness and Response. Daniel started out in 2018 as the emergency manager, and I can assure you he got his work and you got your money out of them this past couple of years with COVID and everything, and still going with that. So Daniel does a great job. Daniel's proven to be a true all-hazards emergency manager, so we go in and recognize him also. The other individual is your medical director, Dr. Carol Lanier. She's a physician with outstanding contribution to EMS. The thing about Dr. Lanier, she's one of the few physicians in the region that takes on so many EMS agencies because she has a true passion to go ahead and see quality EMS services provided. So she's your medical director, but she's the medical director of a couple other agencies, and she's very active in the council. When we do our medical protocol reviews, that goes on about every month, and she gets on, finds time in her schedule, engaged, so we're very appreciative. So she's a gem that you have, and she doesn't cost you anything. So she does it as a volunteer, so she really has some heart and soul in it. So I want to recognize her. The award that I think is most honorable is the agency award. The agency award is one of those ones that shows that your agency is top-notch when you get this award. It shows that you're manning, staffing, doing all the right things, but also forward thinking what's going to happen in the next year, what's going to happen in the next 3 to 5 years, strategic planning, all of those aspects go into it. Now, I've known Chief Ferguson literally since he was a young man when he was in paramedic school, and I've watched him go through his career, and I know a number of these individuals in the department, some of them behind me. Outstanding organization. They care about the community that they live and work in, and they provide excellent service. And that's a testament by getting this award. So on behalf of West Virginia EMS Regional Board, I'd like to present this to Chief Ferguson and all the members of Botetourt County Fire and EMS.
All right. Thank you. And again, just this award, broadcasts the entire organization, volunteer, career, fire, EMS, it's all a system working together for the betterment of the community. So again, we seized the opportunity of 2020 to make the best out of it, and we did use a lot of doors that COVID opened for us to advance our care in the pre-hospital EMS setting. And that's what we continue to do, whether it be the vaccination program, whether it be some of our more advanced medical treatments. We have truly tried to pursue what we could do to better ourselves for the community and the service to the community. So these men and women, as well as many others that aren't here today, are really the ones to thank for this.
All of these hours now.
These men and women that are in the navy blue and gray are part of the career staff, and of course, Chief Bettner. And just so you know, how many years? 7, 8 years ago, Chief Bettner is actually a state EMS Governor's Award recipient for telecommunicators here at the state level. So, look at that.
I just want to reiterate, I think the Chief Ferguson always has that forward thinking. He's always taking a look at what we have next. Outstanding individual that can sell our county tremendous. Well deserved award. Thank you so much. These, I'm going to do both these. The next two recognitions are individuals that have given a lot to our community. One of these is years and years and years of service in a department that has been, through turmoil, has been ups and downs throughout the whole thing that, I can't thank him enough. The other one that has brought the community together time and time and time again through hard work. And I'll let Amy go ahead and introduce these individuals.
Baby and darling, come on down.
So I am so pleased to start this conversation by reading this proclamation. Whereas Garland Humphreys served as the Buchanan District Representative on the Botetourt County Parks and Recreation Commission from December 21st, 1999 until August 31st, 2021, which included serving numerous terms as the Commission's chairman. And whereas Mr. Humphreys has been a diligent and faithful servant to all citizens of Botetourt County, but especially for those in the Buchanan District, and whereas Mr. Humphreys coached multiple recreation teams and has been instrumental in assisting with the Buchanan Booster Club for more than 2 decades, providing thousands of children residing in northern Botetourt County an opportunity to participate in athletics. And whereas Mr. Humphreys was an integral mentor and coach to many members of the 2010 James River High School State Basketball Championship team, including his son Ethan Humphreys. And whereas during Mr. Humphreys' tenure, Botetourt County commenced major renovations to numerous athletic facilities, including building state-of-the-art Botetourt Sports Complex, which has welcomed thousands of guests to the county for tournament play. And whereas Mr. Humphreys was instrumental in providing oversight and execution of the Recreation Incentive Fund, which has led to over $1.5 million worth of improvement to county property. And whereas Mr. Humphreys deeply treasures Botetourt County and its people, and his passion and sincere dedication to provide quality recreation for all of its citizens is to be admired and appreciated. Now therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Supervisors of Botetourt County, on its own behalf and on behalf of the Parks and Recreation Department, the Parks and Recreation Commission, and the citizens of Botetourt County, extends its appreciation and gratitude for Mr. Garland Humphreys' dedication and commitment to grow and promote recreation for the residents of Botetourt County. Further, the board wishes Mr. Humphreys an active and productive and maybe restful future. Thank you so much, Garland.
Stay right there. Got one more picture.
One more picture, and you can say something. Thank you.
So I just want to reiterate all that. I've grown up knowing Garland. We went to high school together. I watched the basketball teams at James River. I watched the growth of sports at Buchanan Elementary. And Jason Ferguson mentioned earlier, we're recognizing those awards, positive change and impact on the community. And that's what all these recognitions are about today. So Garland, thank you. I'm going to let Randy say a few words of thanks as well.
I couldn't have said it better than it's already been said, but just thank you so much for your support and dedication. I've only been here a few short months, but it is clear that you have had a great impact on this community and me personally as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You want to say anything?
I just want to say thanks, and it's been a privilege representing the Buchanan District and the people there, and looking around. It's also been an honor to work with a lot of different people who are on the commission and who are involved in county government. A majority of the people who are here today have served on the commission representing the Board of Supervisors as well. And it's been great getting to know those people outside of the professional side, also the personal being. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Garland.
Thank you so much.
And our next one, Debbie Painter.
You want to read that, or do you want to?
Come on, Debbie, and Ashley, come on up.
So again, it's just these individuals that have really helped the community grow and brought people together for many different reasons. And I'll put my order in just a little bit.
Billy's really upset that we don't have food today. More candy. So I am thrilled to read another proclamation recognizing Debbie Painter. Whereas Debbie Painter has served the Buchanan community for more than 2 decades as owner and operator of the North Star Restaurant, a beloved local eatery. And whereas Debbie Painter began working at the North Star Restaurant in 1977 and has served generations of customers during her long career with the establishment, treating her customers like family. And whereas, as owner and operator for 24 years, Debbie Painter helped the North Star Restaurant maintain its commitment to serving high-quality meals and remain a local landmark and community meeting place for residents of the town of Buchanan and Botetourt County. And whereas, upon her retirement, Debbie Painter sold the North Star Restaurant to Ashley Clark, an employee for more than 20 years whose mother worked at the restaurant, ensuring that the restaurant maintains its local charm. Now therefore, be it resolved that the Botetourt County Board of Supervisors recognizes Debbie Painter for her dedicated years of service to the citizens and visitors of Botetourt County, and that Debbie Painter be commended on the occasion of her retirement as owner and operator of the North Star Restaurant. And be it resolved further that the Botetourt County Board of Supervisors presents this resolution to Debbie Painter as an expression of our admiration and appreciation for her commitment and contributions to the Buchanan, Virginia community.
Two eggs over the medium.
There's one. So I just want to take a quick moment to say a few personal words. You know, growing up in Buchanan, the North Star has been an institution for so long, and I think we're really good as communities and governments and counties about recognizing big economic development announcements, but we don't always make sure that we recognize the small businesses. And you are really what makes our community special. You're what makes our community thrive. And you are such an inspiration and a model for other small businesses to follow, Debbie. So to you, I say thank you so much. And for again, positive impact and change on our community, you are a gathering place. And this has been the hub of Buchanan for as long as I can remember. And congratulations to you, Ashley, and thank you for taking on this challenge and this opportunity. They go hand in hand. We wish you the very best, and I can honestly say from driving to work every morning, I drive by there, and I don't think they have missed an absolute beat. So this young lady has a bright future ahead as well, and we just appreciate you both so much, and you are the heart of our community. And thank you.
Struggle, but Ashley here, she's gonna make it. I'm still there with her several days a week, or a few hours a day. So if you're there, that in the county, please don't know.
It's worth the drive.
And I appreciate everything. Appreciate y'all's support all the years.
Thank you.
Ashley was anything?
She's still shy. We gotta get her into this.
She'll get out of that.
Yeah, we'll fix that.
Or she kisses, that's done.
Thank you. Thank you. Debbie, thank y'all for
Those individuals on the line, and everybody coming up to the speaker, please speak into the mic. It's a little bit difficult, I guess, for people online. Is that right? So if we go to our 2:30, Mr. Clinton, approval of resolution requesting placement in the Virginia Department of Historical Resources.
That's right, it's a pleasure to do this, and this is coming through.
Yeah, you can see it, yeah, that's good. So,
Pleasure to do this, I'm kind of continuing this theme that we set this morning, this afternoon, of accomplished people in Botetourt County and accomplishments in Botetourt County, so this is a good segue. I'm going to very briefly introduce a gentleman, Ken Conklin. He's going to do most of the speaking here, but by way of introduction, there's really four things at play here. One is a man named in Botetourt County, Noble Lee. The other is another man, who's resident of Botetourt County, Ken Conklin, who wrote a wonderful biography of Noble Lee. The third thing is the accomplishments of Noble Lee himself, and the fourth thing that this is about is, as the agenda item indicates, a historical marker in honor of Norman Lee's life. We mentioned this 2 months ago to the board. I mentioned that we would be promoting the idea of a historical marker for Mr. Lee. And what we have here is a resolution that is in our package. But first, I'm going to introduce Ken Cochran a little bit further. He's called, I guess, a fictional, partially fictional biography of Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee is a native of the Eagle Rock area. He was an Olympic boxer. You know the story, I think, and you'll see it in the resolution that we have. But I want to talk a little bit about Mr. Cochran's book because it is, I say, a rousing success. It's a book about Norman Lee. And I'm just going to read very briefly. You can look this up, by the way. Look it up on Amazon. Some of the reviews of the books, of the book. And this is one of them. I like this one because it encapsulates so many things about Norman Lee, about the book, and about Mr. Cochran as an author. This is Victoria Whitebread, who's a book critic, with fine voice. She says it is truly outstanding to believe that everything captured in this novel, it's not really a novel, it's basically true, is authentically about one great man, Norman Lee, a man who should have been more well known before this masterpiece, back to the book, and who deserved nothing but acclaim and recognition. Cochran so tirelessly retold Norman Lee's life events. This book reads like a remarkable work of fiction, so smooth and entrancing. That's Victoria Whitebread. I'm not plugging Ken's book, but I am plugging the idea that it is an exceptional book about an exceptional man. And at the conclusion of Mr. Cochran's presentation, I'll challenge everybody here to name any native in Botetourt County, I'll say Northern Valley native, who is more widely deserving of recognition and acclaim than Norman Lee. It's a remarkable life. I won't go into it too much. Ken's going to talk about it a little bit, but let me introduce Ken Cochran, Botetourt County resident who wrote the book Normal.
Thank you. And I just have some charts that I was going to show. There they are. And so, and it's up to me to click one of these things to move on. Okay.
And Ken, if you could, just kind of speak into that microphone. Thank you very much, I'm sure.
Members of the Board of Supervisors, I want to commend you for considering this resolution recognizing the accomplishment of Botetourt County native Norman Lee. The resolution accurately describes Mr. Lee's remarkable life, and for the next few minutes, I'd like to add some local depth to his legacy. During the 2016 Rio de Janeiro Olympics, this headline appeared on the Fincastle Herald. The background of this was that the late Lillian and Sylvester Brown of Gala brought this story to Judy Barnett of the Botetourt County Historical Society. And you may know Judy, she and her late brother been chronicling the rich African-American culture here in Botetourt County. Anyways, Judy handed this story to Ed McCoy, the then editor of the Fincastle Herald. And McCoy's article and companion piece were compelling. And that article then sent me personally on a journey of a lifetime, which resulted in this book. So the Blitzen Norval's life happened to be winning an Olympic gold medal at the 1952 15th Olympiad in Helsinki, Finland. He won it in boxing. And he was the first black Virginian to win an Olympic gold medal, and probably only the third. In my research, I can only see that he was the third Olympian or gold medal winner from Virginia. He was also awarded the Val Barker Trophy as the outstanding boxer of those Olympics, and an incredible achievement considering also in those Olympics were Floyd Patterson, Ingemar Johansson, and other remarkable boxers at the time. He was also on the U.S. Olympic team in 1948, and in 1948, he was there as an alternate. He came, and he was a veteran of World War II at that point, a Howard University student, and a member of the Olympic team. And he came home here to Botetourt County, Virginia, and to visit his parents up in Gala, and to visit his cousins over in Covington. When he was on the train going from Covington to Clifton Forge, he was arrested for sitting in the white section of a segregated car. It was a misdemeanor, $5 charge, but he decided to appeal that decision. He went to the Virginia State Supreme Court, and it was overturned. This is the front of a 77-page document that I got and read through. The prologue of the book, the testimony in the prologue of the book is taken directly from this, and it's compelling. So, Norbert Lee was born in 1924 here in Botetourt County. This is a copy of his birth certificate. It just says Botetourt County here, but in his service records, it named Eagle Rock as his place of birth. And from my interviews with his descendants, they said that he was born in Lick Run, which is right in the very northern part of Botetourt County. He ended up spending the first 18 years of his life here, graduating high school from the Academy Hill School for Negroes in Fincastle. Center of community life for him was the Rising Mount Zion Baptist Church in Gala. And there were, it was the center of their life. His parents participated at that church strongly. And you may recall the choir from the Rising Mount Zion Baptist Church sang at the Botetourt County 250th anniversary at Lower Botetourt High School when that went on. Just turn this page so I'm not missing any important points. So that is, next to the cemetery is a graveyard. That is the gravestone of Norbert Lee's mother, Georgiana Ray Lee. I learned from the family that she emphasized education and giving back to the community and participating in community affairs. And she expected that from all her children. The entire family was hardworking, industrious, and involved. I went to the Botetourt public schools and asked if they had records from the 1930s and 1940s. And they gave me a room, and they brought out boxes and boxes of pristine records from that period of time. It was an incredible experience just to go through those. They were also from the white schools and also from the Jim Crow era schools at the time too. And I went through them, and it was obvious that these teachers cared very much about their students, about what they were doing. They were very neatly read. They're kept up to this day. I think it's a treasure that needs to be kept alive. This is the card for Norval himself. I went through and found his grade records through the different files and all. He was an A student the entire time he was there. Also noted in the side panels, they made note of a speech impediment that he had. And later on, when I was interviewing his family members and all, and friends, that is the first characteristic they would bring up about him, was his speech impediment. And they did it in an endearing way. In fact, it was just part of him. I wanted to also mention that the teachers at that time, the Jim Crow era teachers, I don't think have been recognized enough for what they've done during that period of time. And I dedicated the book to a couple of the Botetourt County Jim Crow era teachers, and I also dedicated the book for the Jim Crow teachers at the time in general. This is Norbert Lee, Edna Lee, and James Lee, sister and brother in law. They were products of here at Botetourt County. They then, all three of them received undergraduate degrees. James and Norbert received theirs from Howard University, Edna from the Virginia State University over in Petersburg. And from there, all went into education in a big way, both education and community service. Norval did it in a big way. And so what I would like to do from here is just to read some of the accomplishments that Norval had after he won his Olympic gold medal, after he was involved in that civil rights case. He went on to a very, very big career. So I'm going to just read down this list very quickly. After high school in 1943, he was selected for pilot training at Tuskegee, where black World War II pilots were trained. He earned his wings, but was not assigned a unit because of his stammer. He served in the South Pacific in World War II. After the war, he enrolled at Howard University, where he joined the ROTC and stayed in the Air Force Reserves for 30 years, retiring as a lieutenant colonel. He chose not to become a pro boxer. Instead, he married Leslie Jackson of Leesburg and raised 2 daughters. He became chair of the D.C. Boxing Commission on the executive board of the World Boxing Association. The State Department sent him to Africa for 2 months in 1964 as a goodwill ambassador. He began his career in education at the National Training School for Boys. He became director of education at the local reformatory. He was the director of adult and continuing education at Pickle City College, establishing his master's program. He joined Baltimore City Public Schools as coordinator of community and adult education. He studied for a PhD at Catholic University and received an AED, a dissertation. And then for community services, just among the many organizations he was involved with, including being president of the National Daycare Association, VP of American Society of Emergency Planners, president of the American Society of Public Administrators. He was a big supporter of the Special Olympics in Maryland, holding a very popular boxing clinic each year in Maryland. And he purchased rental properties in the D.C. area after retiring, and he became a part owner of a Century 21 real estate office. And that's just a partial list. So one of the events during the interview in 2018, I had the honor of meeting Norval's younger brother, George. He was at a assisted living facility in the Maryland area. On this photo, from left to right, are Norval's granddaughters, Darren, Tiffany, and Danielle, and his nephew, Ken, son of George. Darren and Danielle and Ken both visited us here in Botetourt County. George, I sat down with him, and he is the one that told me that their home, the home that they grew up in, was up on Big Hill Road up in Gala. And so, and George had many, many other stories to talk about growing up here in Botetourt County. It was just a great experience talking to this man. So that's just about what I kind of wanted to say. I just wanted to give you a rundown and really emphasize the connection he had here to Botetourt County and where he came from. I'd like to finish. Oh, I have one more. This is just a map of the Gala area where I'm working with Mr. Nelson Harris for the historical marker. And so we're very fortunate to have him leading this effort because he has experience in setting and going after historical markers. You remember Nelson was former mayor of whatever. He and I have worked out the details a little bit. We're proposing what's on this map is location number 2. It shows, it's right up in the Gala area. It's right at the north part of Gala Loop Road. The rising Mount Zion Baptist Church is nearby, and the approximate location of the Lee family homes is all within a couple miles of each other. So we're proposing that historical marker be established in that area, and we're working on that application. I understand this resolution will be then attached to that application. And I'd like to close with this photo from 1953. This is President Eisenhower hosting a luncheon at the White House for prominent athletes in the area. You'll see that Norval Lee is standing right behind President Eisenhower. You'll also notice in the photo at the right side is Joe DiMaggio and Rocky Marciano. So it was a great. Anyways, that's just a tip. That's just the highlights. There's so much more to his life, and if I had more time, I could spend it telling you. So, okay, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. That photograph is worth the price of admission, and that's fascinating, I think. So, the ultimate purpose here is for the board to the election resolution paragraph, mentioned many of the things that Kim was mentioned about normally many comments. But let me just read the resolution paragraph itself, because this is what our business is all about today. After the introduction and the detail of the Roman's life and accomplishments, the resolution says, now therefore be resolved in Botetourt County in accordance with section 33.2, 213 of the Code of Virginia, does hereby request that Mr. Roman Lee be recognized by the Virginia Department of Historic Resources through the erection of an historical marker celebrating his life and contributions to Botetourt County and the United States of America, to be located along the east side of US Route 220 near the intersection of State Route 622, approximately 2 miles from Lee's childhood home. So that's what we're asking the board resolve. In terms of funding, the locality is responsible for funding. Mr. Conklin mentioned, forgot his name.
Nelson Harris.
Yeah, Nelson Harris, excuse me. Nelson Harris is working on this. He's working on some of the fundraising. We are accepting through the Historical Society contributions. Ultimately, the county has about $2,000 obligation to this. So far, we're about 3/4 of the way raising that money. So we're actually doing fine for funding. It would just be aware that the county is responsible for the funding of the monument itself, which 2 days all it is. So I will move that we approve this resolution supporting a historical marker or normally in the vicinity of Eagle Rock as indicated in our package.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ken, thank you very much. Thank you. And if we can move to the public comment and have, I don't know if I got this right, I only have one individual speaker. Do I have that right?
That gentleman I have received, sir.
Wow. And then we have to go to the phone. I don't know if anybody's on that at this point in time, but let's go ahead and take the first speaker here in the room, Danny Go. Certainly can't miss you. Then if I can also remind you, make sure you speak into the microphone because the people online are thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to speak. I know that y'all don't normally respond to comments, but I just simply had a question for an item that's on the consent agenda, and that's regarding, I may not be able to pronounce this word right, and I'll give it a shot. Malay growing, or whatever, farmer. I had a couple questions. One is how, and I realize this is a lawsuit, so I'm not asking anything associated with the lawsuit part of it, but how are the citizens of Botetourt County harmed by this particular company? I know it's regarding Botetourt. And also, the second question I have is how will this settlement be distributed to those in Botetourt County who have been harmed? Thank you.
Yeah, and it's going to be answered, some of those questions will be answered very, very shortly.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody online on the phones?
If you're on the phone and wish to speak, please raise your hand by pressing star 9. At this time, it doesn't appear that anyone has raised their hand, sir.
Thank you. All right, let's go ahead and move to the consent agenda. If we could, in the purposes of letting our citizens know on number 4, Mr. Lockley can go over some of those things. So everybody's had an opportunity to go over our minutes. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I think we have a small correction on the minutes. Look at the minutes last year, first paragraph, second line, it says, on a motion by Dr. Martin.
You have done moved up in this world.
If he makes it on there, so.
Was that last year or last year? Okay. So, in the event, being that correct, do I have a motion for the
Motion to approve. That's funny.
all in favor? Aye. Thank you. Mr. Lockley, there's been some questions and concerns about how the distribution of this would happen, as well as how it affects citizens. If you could just expel just a little bit on that, that'd be fantastic.
Sure. A couple of years ago, we retained outside counsel who was representing several dozen localities in Virginia regarding the opioids issues that have gone on in this state across the country. And they commissioned we commissioned a study from a statistical expert, and that's still confidential due to the fact that it could wind up being used in litigation. But we commissioned a study which showed that the impacts in terms of costs to county government were into the 7 figures, not well into the 7 figures, but into them. And as a result, we, along with many other localities from across the country, brought suit against various opioid manufacturers and distributors who had used what we consider to be, again, as a large group, that we consider to be improper advertising and pushing practices, and had not been forthright with people about the addictive properties of opioids, and had, as a result, had negative impacts and had costs that both impacted citizens and especially our local government. Because our DSS, our sheriff, and our community services board, our comprehensive service, children's services act funds, all of these things took huge hits as a result of opioids and heroin abuse that came about due to people who had first been addicted to opioids. So we brought that lawsuit, and those lawsuits have started at this point to cascade into bankruptcies and settlements. We had a settlement recently with Purdue Pharma that's still shaking out. That was actually part of the bankruptcy. We got, I believe, somewhere between $16,000 and $80,000, and that was just free clear money for the general fund. What the board will do with that money, I'm sure we'll go through the budget process next year. It's expected that we'll get approximately $60,000 as our settlement out of the Mallinckrodt Pharmaceuticals bankruptcy. There are other pharmaceutical companies that are not going into bankruptcy but are entering settlements. And again, this is all out of Ohio, out of federal court that has thousands of cases pending regarding the same thing. And future settlements for us and for the Commonwealth of Virginia will all go into one large pot of money to be held by, I can't remember the precise name, but it's essentially an opioids settlement administration authority. It's very similar to the Tobacco Commission. Just as the Tobacco Commission was set up so that as tobacco smoking and other use went down, and as a result areas of the state that had traditionally been based on the tobacco economy, the Tobacco Commission came into existence so that it could help take the settlements from the tobacco litigation, which was very similar to the opioid litigation, put that all aside into a trust fund that could be used for economic development projects, so that those people whose grandparents had grown tobacco could get a job doing something other than growing tobacco. Well, this is going to be very similarly set up. This authority will give 15% of the money will be free and clear general fund money for the Commonwealth of Virginia. 15% will be free and clear general fund money. Again, as each settlement comes in, 15% will be free and clear general fund money for each locality. The other 70% will be put into a trust fund to make grants to localities, political subdivisions, and nonprofits dealing with substance abuse problems and substance abuse abatement, particularly with regard to opioids, but I think also slightly more broadly with other types of substance abuse as well. Hope that kind of clarifies where we are in this process. We're at the very beginning of the settlement process. The only domino that's fallen so far was Purdue. Mallinckrodt is getting ready to fall, and we just need to approve, basically, my signing the documentation for that settlement so that the money can all get transferred.
Great, I think that clarifies it pretty well. In that sense, I move for adoption of the motion authorizing the county attorney to vote in favor of crop pharmaceuticals. Second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. If we can, 255, we can move to Mr. Zarella, the approval of transfers and additional appropriations, appropriations.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and all in attendance. For the month of August, there is one transfer request, which is a transfer for matching funds for recent donations received for the Greenfield Preservation Fund. With respect to appropriation requests, there are 9 pass-through and 2 regular appropriations being requested. And these appropriations represent expenditure reimbursements, miscellaneous receipts, scholarship funds, and funds for infrastructure repairs. Of particular note are pass-through items 7 through 9 that represent appropriations for certain discrete funds that require new appropriations to spend funds in FY22. In addition, item number 6 represents an appropriation of a grant awarded to the county from the Virginia Department of Emergency Management for a mobile generator. Number 6 is the appropriation for state funds, and item number 11 is the county matching portion for the mobile generator and its installation, bringing the total appropriated cost to $97,567.72. Respectfully requested that these appropriations be approved by the board. Are there any questions?
Any questions from the board? Not. I move for a motion. Motion to approve. Second. All in favor? Aye. And Mr. Zarella, the approval of account payable application of short accounts.
Before we do that, Mr. Chairman, I've got another appropriation for your consideration. It's a request for supplemental appropriation.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
In that case, the request for supplemental appropriation.
Yes. Yes, this reappropriation of budgeted funds is for the Greenfield Sewer Pipe Installation Project. This relates to the Munters Sewer Extension. Staff recommends the reappropriation of these funds totaling $90,649.59 so that the project can move forward and receive the available funds in order to make progress on a timely basis. Resolution is provided as documentation for the reappropriation request. Are there any questions?
Mr. Chairman, if there's no questions, I move for approval.
I'll second. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Next.
Yes, sir. With respect to accounts payable for the month of August, total expenditures being requested for approval for August for the general fund, including debt service and all other funds, is combined $984,559.82. Disbursements of note for the month of August are as follows. Under technology services, $35,000 paid to ESRI for an annual software maintenance agreement. Under CIP, infrastructure improvements, $31,953 paid to Garland/DBS Incorporated for a replacement of the Eagle Rock Library roof. Also under CIP, Virginia Western Community College Workforce Training Center, $31,956 paid to Architectural Partners for professional services performed. Also under Technology Services, $47,092 paid to Harris Enterprises for annual software maintenance. And finally, under CIP, Reed Mountain Fire Station renovations, $29,755 paid to Garland/DBS Incorporated for work performed at the station, including roof work. Are any questions or comments related to the requested accounts payable expenditures for the month of August?
Questions from the board here? Is there a motion?
So moved. Second. All in favor? Aye. And Mr. Zerla, the approval of personal property tax relief, TPTRA.
Sir, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Please find your packet the agenda item for consideration of a resolution to set the percentage of personal property tax relief in Botetourt County for the 2021 tax year. This agenda item concerns itself with establishing a tax relief percentage that will be used to allocate $3.4 million block grant received by the county each year to be applied as a credit to citizens' personal property tax bills. The base for allocating the credit is dependent on qualifying vehicle values. The task of deriving the 2021 relief percentage was performed by the Commissioner of Revenue and the Treasurer. For the 2021 tax year, projected personal property tax valuations yield an estimated reimbursement from the state of 46%. This projected percentage takes into consideration the composition of the county's vehicle value, base, and the fixed nature of the state block grant. Projected 46% state share results in a 54% citizen share, which is an increase from the 48% citizen share utilized last year. The largest factor for this relief percentage, decrease in relief percentage, is due to the notable increase in used vehicle values. With that, the request that the board adopt tax resolution setting the county personal property tax relief percentage at 46% for the 2021 tax year. Are there any questions?
Tony, is there any likelihood that this concept is just going to go away and all these changes just be incorporated into the tax code? Because it's been around since the late 80s.
Well, the sad part of it is that the block grant remains a block grant, and it's been that way for quite a long time. So there's never an increase in allowing the ability to provide more grant funds from the state and more relief to the taxpayers. So that's the part that is disconcerting. But I haven't seen any readings, or I haven't seen anything that is saying that this is going to go away.
Any other questions? John, do I hear a motion?
So moved.
I'll second it. All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. And if we can move to our 3 o'clock appointment to Highway Department. Ms. Smith?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, board members. Hope everyone is well today. On our report this month, we have the 220 project of an aggregate canal is wrapping up. It should be completed this fall, so people will start to see some changes in pavement striping. Some of the decrease in the speed limits will be removed. There's some resurfacing going on, but we're coming close to the end on that project now. So I think everyone will be very excited when that's finished. In addition, our paving schedule is still ongoing, so you'll start to see more of that in the coming weeks. Our staff has been very busy with a lot of site plans this month, as you can see on the list. If you have any specific questions about any of them, I'd be happy to answer those. We've issued several permits throughout the county, ranging from utility permits to private entrances, special events, and the maintenance of traffic. Mostly is for the utilities, they just need to set up traffic control. Our Rural Rustic project on Stone Cold Road has begun, so that'll probably take another month or so to finish up, but it'll be a good project once it's finished. Our Exit 150 mowing contract that we put in place to do additional mowings has had a slight hiccup this past time. The superintendent and the person in charge of the contract had a bit of a miscommunication about what was supposed to happen out there, but they have assured us that that issue will not arise again. So the roundabout will continue to be mowed on a more regular basis. The area headquarters has been very busy over the past month trying to get some pipes replaced and patching done for the paving schedule, as well as some gravel road work and other various types of work that have needed to be addressed. And that's all we have on the report.
questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Any questions from Buchanan?
Yeah.
Or concerns?
Believe it or not, we're good in Blue Ridge.
Great.
Yes, nothing burning at this point. I talked to Mr. Barney earlier about a couple of things. We're good. Thank you.
Shut the internet down, that's all.
Wow. You're off the hook.
Wow, this one.
You picked the right one to be here.
Tell Mr. Barney.
Tell Randy.
Yeah.
He'll send you a lot more often. Thank you so much.
Thank you, have a good day.
If we can, I know there's an appointment at 3:30, 3:45, 4, and 4:15, but if we go to 13, that's all right, we can look for Mr. Pearson. Sorry to jump on this a little bit earlier. Time well spent here.
Sir, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. The next item on your agenda is a request to advertise for a planning commission public hearing to consider amendments to the Botetourt County Comprehensive Plan sewer and water infrastructure map to show the expanded service area on property identified on real property identification maps of Botetourt County, section 107, partial 5B, and located at 8277 Sanderson Drive. This is a property owner initiated request, and in their application, the application came in from Edward Martin on behalf of New Beginnings Church at Cloverdale, which is requesting that the board consider an amendment to the comprehensive plan and map to expand the service area that would allow for public extensions of sewer and water upon their property. The purpose of the request is in support of the forthcoming rezoning request from the residential R1 use district to the residential R3 use district for the redevelopment of an existing church building into a senior living facility that would contain approximately 12 dwelling units and a creation of not more than about 15 zero lot line parcels on the remainder of the property. Staff would be happy to answer any particular questions that the board may have concerning the request. And if agreeable, staff would request that the board direct us to advertise for the comprehensive plan map amendment for the October regular planning commission meeting. Be happy to answer any questions.
So do we have any renderings of the buildings and what this is going to look like from an architectural standpoint?
We do not yet. We have not received the actual rezoning application at this time. The applicant did want to kind of go through the comprehensive plan map amendment just to make sure that the county was amenable to hearing their rezoning request. But they do intend on having renderings, conceptual site plans, and things like that should things move forward. This is the church that is kind of located between Cypress Court and Altamira and Sanderson Ridge. It's an interesting area when you look at the service area map in that we have public water and sewer on both sides of the property, but it's not shown in the service area. Chapter 24 would not allow for the expansion of additional public lines unless the property is shown in the service area. So it's kind of all around, but they do need the public water and sewer to be able to make the potential project work.
This is right at the bottom of their hill. That should be the front water right there. And I guess that I got to take a look at this every day once to find out what this is going to look like for the seniors that are going to be there. That's pretty steep hill. So didn't know how it's going to be set up.
Well, the church site itself, which kind of sits up on the top of the hill, would be carved out for the facility. And the remainder of the property, which is more on the slope, would be where you would see some of the zero lot line homes themselves, and that wouldn't necessarily be seniors or age population.
And I think this kind of conforms to what's surrounding on both sides of it, from Altamar to the side. So I don't see a problem with that. I think that's perfectly fine. Anybody else have any questions?
This is just giving them the ability to explore this and see what the options are. We'll see more details down the road.
I was just premature.
Yeah, no, I think that's, because I had the same questions, like what is it going to look like? This is just giving them the ability to.
Right. Let's explore those three. So, anybody? So, I'll make a motion to direct staff to advertise and post amendment. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. We go to our committee reports. I'll do the best I can to waste some time here. There are emergency communications report. Jason, are you still? Thank you very much. Chief Ferguson. It's over to you.
Good afternoon again, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. With me today, I have Guy Jornalis, who has been the project manager for Morecom, who's been working for us for about the past 150 days or so, as well as, I believe, just briefly excuse himself, Mr. Ian Duff, the Director of Wireless Solutions from Morecom, and their president, Manuel Oveda, sends his regards. He had another meeting in D.C. to attend. So what we'd like to do is give you a briefing on the study findings. We're at a point where you all have a blue binder in front of you. That is hot off the press as of this morning. It is all of the study findings in a formidable document of about 92 pages that includes the appendices. And we just wanted to walk you through what we've done up to this point, with Morecom taking the lead on this and what their recommendations are. There's no action requested other than to accept the report for review and continue the work of the Emergency Communications Committee. So obviously, we set out with our request for proposal to have the emergency communication system reviewed and look at our aging infrastructure and help understand what we have and what the future potential needs could be. As well as look at some proposed options, which is what Morecom is presenting today in the report. As part of that, they looked at our radio frequencies, their levels of power and strength, and where those antennas are on different towers, as well as the influence of what you'll see noted as the NQZ, or the National Quiet Zone. That's related to the Green Bank Observatory. That really affects the northern end around Glen Wilton, Eagle Rock area, because some of the powers have to be reduced. The mounting of the antennas can't be quite as high because we can't impact that area that could cause problems with the telescope. So that impacts us about 45 to 50% of the land mass of the county, and you'll see there's a map contained within that shows that. As well as just looking at our tower sites that we have versus the potential for new or totally brand new built from the ground up sites versus attaching to towers that are already existing, our connectivity options, and really there was a question about how there could be some integration of CDRS in the infrastructure here, which has also been addressed. So as part of this process, Guy spent a great deal of time in Botetourt County, as well as doing some interviews over the phone. Thankfully, he was able to meet with every volunteer fire chief from each segment of the county, which is very beneficial for helping determine where the responders feel the challenges to be today, where the radios don't work the best today, as well as with our law enforcement partners, working with the sheriff's office, talking about the exact same things, and then also the school system, because they do have a radio frequency and all the buses are on that channel on the current emergency communication system. So then from there, to assess all of that information, evaluate the current technology and forecast some of the future technology, and compare that to what the needs that were presented from the various groups to help put together a model of some proposed options for us. And that's the point that we're at today. So if you look at the map here, really the red sections are things that emergency responders know to be true without having to go to these places. These are the areas of greatest impact, and these are just polygons dropped over the areas. There was some more high-tech data derived from some field testing that you can speak to. But really, this is the projected areas that the responders indicated were our biggest challenges when responding to events and trying to talk on the radios of today. Blue Ridge in general, it doesn't matter, there's no particular area, just the whole Blue Ridge area in general is a broadcast challenge. Both Fire and Wall presented that, of course. The Appalachian Trail for the events that we have there for injured and lost hikers and so forth. Telecommunications up there can be difficult at times. The risk in the area, just because of its rural nature, is a problematic area, but also not something that we respond to that often. Glen Bolton, of course, the National Quiet Zone can provide some of that. And then, of course, areas like Arcadia, where we're up against the mountains and down in valleys where radio frequency doesn't project that well. And then the same is true for the Blue Ridge Parkway because of the elevations and projection of radio frequency. Secondary to the outdoor items, there are indoor items. And with whatever we go to in the future, those challenges will only be more present because the building design and construction, the thickness, as well as going to some digital technology, which is the platform that you'll find all of those around us are currently either on or progressing to. The only locality that surrounds Botetourt that is not on a digital platform today is Craig, and they're a couple of steps ahead of us in the process. So they are moving to the P25 digital that you'll see referenced through Apple. So just for numbers, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but as part of this process, it was trying to project the current versus future needs of things like our mobile radios that are in vehicles, as well as portables that you see folks carry on their hips or in a sling on their side for both law and fire and EMS. So really a lot of this was just looking at inventories of today and projecting potential growth or evolution in the various segments of the review here. I guess some key points there. The current Kenwood devices, which are mainly either original generation or renewed models of the original Kenwood devices that were deployed in the 1990s, those are predominantly found in the sheriff's office and the schools. They are not P25 capable, which means we can't upgrade them or update them. Many of the radios that we have in the fire and EMS side of things have the ability to be updated, because a lot of it is firmware and basically carrying a computer on your hip. And P25 was something that we knew was the evolution of radio systems for quite a number of years, so we went ahead and kind of prepared for some of that. Other requirements that were brought forward in conversations with the various groups, encryption. So right now, if you have the right numbers and the appropriate equipment, which you can buy off the shelf equipment, you can not only listen to our frequencies, but you can actively engage in our frequencies. So if somebody wanted to buy a mobile radio for a couple $100 and put the right numbers in it, not only could they hear fire and EMS and law enforcement traffic, but they could actually push the key and have a conversation across a public safety grade radio frequency that we're trying to talk about life safety issues and response issues. So we have zero encryption at the present time with that. So that's obviously something that's desired, is to have that level of encryption. Location on PTT, which is push to talk. So basically, GPS is built into a lot of these radios now. It's an option that we would like to maximize so that we can see where responders are when they push to talk. That could be very beneficial to us when we're doing things like searches and wide area searches are out on the trails. Pagers have been around for a really long time. That's the primary mode of alerting our fire and EMS folks, both volunteer and career. We do have other applications that are available on phones, but pagers still remain the one thing that is broadcast across a radio frequency that we have full control over. Third-party applications, if the internet's down and the network is down, getting outside of dispatch at this moment in time, that application would not be connected. The pager is connected off of our radio system. And then, of course, fire station alerting system, which would be something that could be future added to integrate with our CAD in dispatch to where it alerts the fire station and the bells and whistles go off within the fire station for those responders that are staying overnight and sleeping there. So really, a lot of this boils down to what our interoperability needs are, because right now we are standalone and we were in 1998 in the sense of we have our own system. And it's built and designed within the boundaries of Botetourt County, and we are the primary users of that. In looking at our surrounding jurisdictions, as you can see by the graphic there, Allegheny and Covington have hopped on with Rockbridge and Lexington and Buena Vista in having a regional network. They have a regional radio system that was just put online about a year ago or under that. Bedford or Region 2000, as it used to be referred to, Bedford, Amherst, Campbell, and Lynchburg have a platform where they have a partnership of a radio system that shares certain components of the infrastructure. And then, of course, our neighbors that we integrate and operate with every single day, often multiple times a day, Roanoke County, the city of Roanoke, and the city of Salem, have had a regional radio system for a number of years. Salem just joined that most recently, and Franklin County joined onto that same platform of infrastructure. So sharing some major core components, but also having the ability to stand on its own is the model. So those things were taken into account. Obviously, Reed Mountain Fire Station is the one that operates concurrently with Roanoke County each and every day. We rely on mutual aid from Roanoke County on a frequent basis. And to some degree, we rely on a level of mutual aid on a little bit less frequent basis, but still from the Iron Gate area of Allegheny County. I wouldn't want to create a disparity there. We do rely on Iron Gate for fire and EMS resources in the Glenville area, but more predominantly we're relying on some of the resources and crossover on the southern end of the county with Roanoke County.
Jason, is that a futile quest? If all those jurisdictions aren't interoperable now among themselves, we can't be interoperable with all of them.
There are means to be interoperable with most all of it, and you'll see that later on. There are different ways to handle things. Okay. A lot of it has to do with partnerships, and the bigger item is the finances of doing so. So here's a basic graphic of the interoperability needs and what the challenges are. So if you look at Credit County, we have very little need for actually interoperating because we don't collaborate very much. The incidents don't present themselves on the line or across the line very, very often. But we do have technology, a mode, and a spectrum to actually do that. So it's got all green lights, right? But if we don't use it, it doesn't matter that much. All the way across to the other end of the spectrum, Roanoke County, where we have a very high need for it, but we do not currently have, aside from having some dual band, very expensive radios, we do not have a common, easy platform that allows us to just stay on the channel we're on a standard radio and talk without changing channels and things of that nature. So right now, you have to be technically proficient in maneuvering from one system to the other to talk with Roanoke. So there is some technology built in there that allows for it, but it's very difficult and expensive, really, is the key. So us versus our neighbors, we're analog, which means that's the old way of doing business. Everything's pushing towards P25. P25 is the federal standard for public safety grade radio infrastructure and equipment. It's digital. We are currently conventional versus what other jurisdictions are called is trumped. It's the new way of maximizing the use of the various frequencies we have. Versus the example that I would give you right now, and Guy, please correct me if I'm wrong, but if we have 6 lines and we have 6 people all keyed up on those lines, then the entire system is tied up. With trunking, it's like sending someone to whichever line becomes available next, right? So it maximizes the use, because like the sheriff's frequency, we can't key up on the fire and rescue frequency and use that if it's free and open and nobody else is talking on it, and vice versa. Trunking just creates a group of lines that whoever's keying up, if there's an available line, they get in line and go through the pack. If that makes any sense to you. And then spectrum. Right now we're on a 450 megahertz, which is an ultra high frequency, and other jurisdictions, the Allegheny and Rockbridge system is 450 megahertz, but they're at P25, and the rest of our neighbors, with the exception of Craig, are on the 800 megahertz band, which is a really old cellular technology back in the day that's continued to evolve. What we currently use as a tool that was provided by the Virginia State Police is a product called RIOS. Basically, it's a means of tethering radio systems together electronically in the dispatch center. The challenge with that is it's a state-maintained system. Some jurisdictions use it, some jurisdictions don't. And there are volume issues and quality issues because you have to hit your home system to be able to talk through it to somebody else. So if Roanoke comes into Reed Mountain to help the Botetourt folks and they can't hit a Roanoke Tower site, it does no good. We can't talk because you have to hit your home tower to talk across it. So the same would be true if we went somewhere where we didn't have coverage to help a neighbor. If we can't key up and hit one of our mountaintop sites, then RIOS is out of the equation. It doesn't actually help us. Things that we do have in place, the Reed Mountain Station as well as our fire administration folks have dual band radios. Like I said before, we have that technology because we've been working with Roanoke County for so long. We had to be able to talk to them on the fire grounds and emergency scenes. Otherwise, we would be putting people at great risk in a fire and things like that where they need to provide emergency traffic outside of a house that they're in. Virginia State Police does have some ability to integrate and work with our frequencies through loaned radios to them because of some of the task force things that are going on with the Sheriff's Office. And then the other more primitive way of today's times would be cell phones, direct calling amongst dispatch centers. So those are some current options. Not going to spend a lot of time on this because there's a lot of information there that's within the document, but this is just the layout that we provided. It kind of encapsulates what our system is. And you can see we have, as you know, we have 4 mountaintop tower sites, Big Hill, Crawford, and Purgatory. Those are the ones that are all under the National Flight Zone permissions and parameters. Tinker is the only one that is not, because obviously it's on the southern end of the county. They all report back to the Fincastle Tower site. The key that I want to bring up there, that you'll see in the report, single point of failure. If the Fincastle Tower site, which is our main hub that these rebroadcast to, goes down, then we're offline. There are backup means, but they are very manual backup means to still be able to communicate. And from the Fincastle Tower site on Grove Hill, it goes into the dispatch center where all the mainstay equipment is to integrate those things and to be able to talk out of there and talk with our dispatch center. Aside from that, if you have any questions, by all means, stop me, but some of that's way more detailed than we want to get into today. Have you had a failure with Fincastle? It has come offline at least once before that I know. And the other thing that, part of this for future considerations, we own the Fincastle Tower site and the Big Hill Tower site. Those are Botetourt County properties. We have, and you'll see in this recommendation about maintaining the system and having somebody to do that. We have had a scenario where a third-party vendor riding on our tower site probably about 5 to 7 years ago moved our microwave down and pointed it into a tree limb. You do that, the whole system volume can drop pretty much off the chart, right? And you don't know why. So being responsible for towers means that people have to be clearly, totally, ultimately responsible, and somebody's got to oversee that and be on site to make sure third-party people riding that touch things and move things don't touch and move very important things to our emergency communication system. And we have not had that capacity before.
That being said, we talk about the quiet zone and the difficulty. When we're re-engineering this, we have to re-engineer this. What's the wait time to go into re-engineering the quiet zone?
It's pretty long. I did a pre-application to be able to do a design, and it took 3 months to do this, and that's expedited way. She was nice with me. So I think, I don't know how long it is, really, okay. You have to count 6 months at least. Okay. And it needs to be done before you apply for frequencies to the FCC.
That being said, we always look for the longevity of each and every item that we purchase. And we take a look at this as from 1998 of this analog setting that we have right now. Which the other question to that whole part is, have we had any encryption with the offenses to this thing? But the first question is, the longevity of this is hard to say with technology increasing. But I certainly hope that there would be a good amount of longevity.
The main vendors have programs where you can upgrade the system every 2 years, such that you always catch up with the technology. Such that, so in 10 years from now, which is typically the life cycle of those systems, you don't have to have this forklift investment. You do this investment every year, and eventually it might be more expensive. I don't know if we have to compare the prices, but you don't have to find this big investment that you need to find now.
On encryption and offenses?
So really the challenge to that, I know we've had issues over the years where random radios key up that don't have identifiers and things of that nature. I can't say that was the general public or any malicious nature. The problem is we don't even have monitors on the systems today to tell us some of those details. Like part of this study would be to find out how many key ups do we have, to help figure out how many frequencies we need. We don't have those types of monitors on the systems today that we would in the future, hopefully. And the other piece is if we do have a radio that was once authorized and we're having trouble recapturing that device, the newer systems, you can actually unauthorize or deactivate that piece of equipment so that even while you're waiting to go pick it up from someone, it takes away the ability to actually key up on the system or hear what's going on. Those are things we don't have today.
One other question, I'll be quiet for a little bit, is because this is new public standards, are there grants available for helping us out with some of the items necessary?
Yes, FEMA and the DHS has, I don't know, every year they have grants that are allocated for telecommunications, and they favor actually the P25 technology.
Thank you.
Yeah, so just covering that, that's part of what we had carved out for when we're ready to move into phase 2 of this, is looking at the actual system design that we feel that we would need and how to fund that, identifying the grant opportunities, when to go for them, because there are federal ones, there are state ones of various types. So those are all on the forecast for things that we would look at going forward. So I spoke briefly to the reliability issue of how the system is currently designed, that there are not alternative pathways. A good example there, we have had this happen. Crawford is the main link to Big Hill, So if Crawford goes offline, so does Big Hill. So it takes out a large area of landmass, because actually, even in the Daleville area, sometimes the Crawford Tower is the one that the voter picks up. I know that's surprising with the Tinker Tower site in plain view, but that may be direction related. Nonetheless, that was part of this process, was evaluating the design options to maybe help forecast how to get around that and have more redundancy in the system, so that there's not as many single points of failure, if any. Some of the operational items there that Guy went to all mountaintops. Deputy Bentley from the Sheriff's Office carted him around to each mountaintop. And of course, some of those things are challenging as well, when that we're a rider on a tower that we don't own, and they're responsible, like the main tower companies. Crown Castle is the one that owns Botetourt that we ride on. And so trying to make sure that that road is maintained is important. It's more important to us as locals for our radio system than it may be to a cell subscriber from wherever, that we'll send some people in a few days or whatever to take a look at something where we may need to have emergency access to take a real quick look to get the system back online if there were a problem. Our shelters, the shelters have been degrading over time and had some address to them over about 5 years ago, but they're kind of really small in size, and the amount of equipment that's in there right now doesn't necessarily allow for a footprint to build a new radio system alongside the old radio system. And those shelters really are not designed to a public safety standard, because pretty much they were foam insulated, and that foam under high heat and very extreme low temperatures with lots of moisture just degraded and dissolved over time. So there are some other options to look at there. And then on the reliability issues, the last one I'll point out is, right now there's no regular process for alignment and antenna line checks on the devices that we carry. So we do not have a third party or anybody in-house that takes a look at tuning of the radio equipment today, which obviously, if that's not done often as it should be, things can get out of tune, out of adjustment, and they don't necessarily work well. So all of those things lead to really what is the next step, what do we do? As I mentioned, P25 is the standard that's being recommended to upgrade to. The potential to deploy some additional sites really is in the report, as well as the potential for building two completely non-existent sites as of today, like Oriskany and the one that would be potentially be in the Kapalua area. If those were items that we wanted to action, we would have to acquire land and build it from the ground up, unless there was some tower in the making between now and the time we arrive there. Vehicle repeater systems, we talked about the potential there to help boost areas with low coverage. That may be a better investment than building a tower from the ground up, yet to be determined, but an option. As well as deploying a county ordinance or policy on in-building coverage in new buildings. Large, thick buildings that above and below grade, where firefighters may need to be during a fire. There is standard out there in building code that we could adopt to put that onus on the person building the building to include as part of the construction costs, so that it's already built into the facility. Operations and maintenance, having a dedicated person responsible with the necessary tools to do the business, AKA the radio person. Neither the Fire and EMS Department nor the Sheriff's Office has that person. We both have people with the ability to program radios and do some of the basic upkeeps, but we do not have a radio person that understands the infrastructure, the backbone, how to adjust minor tweaks and things. We rely on a third-party vendor that was the vendor that installed the equipment in the 90s to come from Blacksburg or wherever their technician is to address and evaluate the issue. It's a significant investment, and we got the feedback from Morcom that was not unfamiliar that we may need someone to maintain that investment long term. Fire station alerting as an ancillary piece to this project, and really the biggie was the recommendation from Guy and his folks was we should strongly consider regional network system, radio systems, so joining a regional partner in this adventure. And the regional partner that is recommended in the study that's printed there with you, that they recommend is that we should look at joining the Roanoke Regional Radio System. So just to give you some graphical example there, existing versus P25 400 megahertz versus the 700-800 megahertz spectrum. It's really hard to tell from looking at smaller maps, but the blue is mobile coverage, and you see more of that than you do the green. The green is portable coverage at the hip level. So talking from radio at the hip level. And really there are pros and cons to the two various options of the 400 megahertz spectrum versus the 700-800 megahertz spectrum that's identified within the report. Here's an example of the proposed backhaul system that is being designed by Morcom just off of provisional information. Again, more of a means of tying multiple paths to each tower site as opposed to just having one point of contact with the system, which could ultimately lead to a single point of failure. So some of the specifics comparing 400, 700, 800 is really how many frequencies are required, where we are today, and then what the potential is for future growth. So the short version is that less frequencies may be required on the 450 megahertz bandwidth. However, that's using a dual path process. So that means in the radios themselves may actually cost more. There's some lingo that's in there like FDMA and TDMA. I don't want to get too deep, but basically dual path versus single path. The 700 to 800 megahertz spectrum that they're recommending is a single path that has a reduced cost on radios up front that could be upgraded in the future if we needed to double the amount of talk paths on the system. So it provides the ability for expansion and growth. That's where the up to 2 times the growth would be on that frequency range. The coverage, 450 gives a little bit better than 700, 800, but realistically, the mountains don't change. So the mountainous area is not going to make one necessarily better than the other in the grand scheme of things. We talked about the cost there. That's the TDMA feature that I was referring to. And really it boils down to where do we need to be able to interoperate and talk with our partners. The law enforcement side of the house very clearly said that their most frequent interaction is with the Roanoke Valley, as is ours. And of course, we would have a high level of achievement in tying in if we went with the recommendation of going with the Roanoke Regional System. So yeah, this is what the previous graphic explained. It is our options between Roanoke Valley, Central Virginia, and Rockbridge. Any detail you want to provide there, Dean? Any additional detail?
No, I think you're good.
And the one point of note with regional coverage, if we did go with the Roanoke Regional System, is part of the Blue Ridge area that we could not build out easily on our own, staying in our footprint of Botetourt County, would be covered by pre-existing coverage from the Roanoke Regional System. So the towers that Roanoke County already has in place for their system, or the Roanoke County City system, is already covered in parts of Botetourt. We know that to be true. So it would provide more infill in the Blue Ridge area than us standing on our own and putting just a Botetourt tower site in Blue Ridge because of the way the valley weaves through there. That makes reasonable sense.
Chief?
Yes, sir.
In reality, it basically comes down to 700 to 800 is probably the best option.
If we take the recommendation of moving towards the Roanoke regional system, then that is not an option. 800 megahertz is what they're on. 700 is a partner spectrum, and that's what's available. And it talks the same, it looks the same, it is the same as 800. So yes, there would not be a question of whether we went with 450 megahertz unless we were talking about joining the Rockbridge Allegheny system. Correct.
And the other thing is basically 2 towers are needed. Is that right?
Oriskany and Catawba were recommended as complete brand new towers if we wanted to exercise those options. Yes, sir.
But they are other new towers, right? They're not
Yes.
from scratch, but they are new towers.
Yes. So the recommendations contained within the report do mention new towers in the sense of adding to existing tower sites that are out in the county identified by the FCC. But the 2 brand new, like that there would need to be land required to add the tower and build it, are risking it. Does that make reasonable sense? Okay. So what does that achieve? If we go with the recommendation of joining the Roanoke regional system, that's the partner that we interact with the most. We would have seamlessly integrated coverage of the 700, 800 megahertz band if we went with that regional system. We could do something that would give us good coverage if we were standalone, but again, I think from the inception of this, we had the potential that regional partnering may actually provide a better outcome for everybody, and of course, that's what the results have pointed to. So how they achieved some of the recommendations in terms of pricing, I know this is a very important piece of this, and it's much more detailed in the document. They engaged with Harris, which is one of the big vendors that actually has a place in Forest, Virginia, as well as Motorola, another large vendor and name out there, and Tate, which we've had Tate equipment in our system in the past, and I think we still have some Tate equipment in our system. And as he spoke to with me, they asked for a rough order of magnitude, aka ballpark pricing. If this system was what you were going to implement, what's the rough price that you would charge to do it standalone, do it regionally, adding on to somebody else, those types of things. And ultimately, Tate does a lot of third-party vendor stuff to add up their costs, so they were not able to give an apples-to-apples rough order of magnitude, so there was no exact price included from Tate. The ROM for Harris is somewhere in the $18 million range, and that would be if we were going with the Rockbridge Allegheny or even the Bedford type of system, and the $23 million was the ROM provided by Motorola, and that was joining the regional system. And that does include the cost of 2 towers built from the ground up, but not site acquisition costs, not roads and electricity and things of that, just the buildup of the tower and the equipment that would ride on it. Because obviously the only thing they have to do is add 2 more towers into the pricing. Harris did not have a differential between regional system versus standalone. So the 18 million rough impact that they provided was whether we were on our own or joined one of the partner systems that they currently are the vendor for. There are other components just to be aware of, whether we went with vehicle repeaters, the fire station alerting, and even some of the recorder stuff that's needed in the dispatch center that are not in that ROM, because there are ways to achieve acquiring that without going through any one of these particular vendors. So Their overall recommendation was that we look at getting the subscriber radios from the vendor that we do the radio system infrastructure from, because no one obviously is going to allow their device on a different system to be 100% capable of everything it's capable of. There are certain proprietary things. So that was one point worth mentioning, as well as the 700 megahertz band is what was recommended, because the 800 megahertz band is fully committed based on his conversations with the Region 42 radio folks, which is the region that we reside in for radio frequencies. Everything else on that slide, I believe, has already been covered, so I don't want to be redundant. In the short term, two biggies that they would like us to work on addressing that have nothing to do with getting a new radio system, and those are the top two. We have a radio frequency license issue, the FCC registration on the link between our dispatch center to the Fincastle Tower site needs to be registered. It is currently not, and no one knows exactly why that is. And secondly is the programming of the different frequencies that are in our radios are above what the original parameters issued by the FCC recommended. So it's just realignment of that to make sure that we're in compliance with the FCC's requirements.
So hopefully that'll be in place.
What questions do you have?
If we start, first of all, I hope there's a big grant, but first of all, how long do you imagine this to be complete? That will take certain steps.
I think at the kickoff meeting, we talked about the turnkey online being somewhere around 3 to 5 years from the moment we started this process. Is that fair?
Yeah, typically the longer item is the construction of the sites, negotiation of the leases, if it's an existing tower, and or if it's construction of a new tower, site acquisition and everything like that.
Is this a project that has to be done in totality, or is this something that can be staged? Do part of it, and then later part of it, and then later part of it, or is it one package?
There are components that need to be installed right away, but you could, for instance, not build the Orescani site and the Catawba site and add them afterwards. Eventually it's going to be more expensive. You have to do more engineering work and might have to change the existing sites to make it work.
So Jason, do I understand that a lot of your equipment now will not work with the 800 megahertz system?
That is correct. Yes, sir.
What kind of multiplier did we use when we looked at projected needs as far as numbers of units and things?
From our perspective, over the past about 3 years, we have been downsizing the number of radios in the fire and EMS side. I believe the total number of radios originally purchased back in 1998 was around 550 portable radios. I think we determined that to be more than Roanoke City Fire and Police together back then. So we used a very conservative figure, just looking at the number of apparatus that we have today, because what we've transitioned to is all of the officers, volunteer and career, have a portable radio assigned to them, as well as one portable radio per riding seat in any fire truck or ambulance. That equates to 2 in an ambulance or up to 6 in a fire truck, so that whoever gets on the truck has a radio available to them. It is their lifeline in a fire to be able to communicate that they're in distress. So we think that's important. But also, what we don't have right now in the newer radios, at least on the fire and EMS side, is we do not have any backups. Like, we don't have stuff to hand out when one's in the shop type of thing. And so that was part of our calculation. There was no defined multiplier, but we were very conservative in our approach to how many we thought we'd need.
Does our existing equipment have any value if we were to undertake this project?
You have, so depending on the vendor you choose, but you have the P25 radios that you have, some of them can be upgraded to to support the 800 vacancies, the 700 vacancies. But that's not the majority of the devices.
Yeah. So a lot of the investment that you all have allowed for with fire and EMS, those bright green and yellow looking radios, those are basically computers on our hips, and they are the ones that have the ability to be flashed and upgraded and added on to, whereas many of the others in the schools and the law enforcement side, well, not many others, all are not.
Does that number you gave us, that, and I realize that's just an estimate, does that include the personnel cost? You mentioned that we need a radio person.
No, ma'am.
That would not, so it would be plus the personnel cost for that.
Jason, what's the next
Number
step?
doesn't include interest.
Certainly. Well, like I said before we even got into the details, this was just more to give you some background on the report so that you can digest it. You already have Emergency Communications Committee stood up with 2 board members representing you, Dr. Scott Horn and Mr. Martin. And my recommendation would be that the Emergency Communications Committee get back together after about 20 or so days of reading and digesting this, and talk about next steps of whether we want to evaluate and move in any direction on reviewing the primary recommendation, or whether we'd like to look at a secondary option and then explore from there, so that we can come back to the board with a recommendation. Phase 2 of what was put into the RFP, which we have the option of retaining more for, if we so choose, would be to carry out the actual engineering process and helping derive a bid for what we would need. Certain things, if we choose to go with a regional system, the selection of the vendor is already done, because you can't add components to the backbone, the core backbone from another vendor. However, there are pieces and parts that Yi has mentioned that any vendor could provide that would be adequate, that may be worth bidding out to slowly get that number down. It's not going to come down immensely, but it has wiggle room. I think it has a good deal of wiggle room, and of course, it has no negotiation at this point. Those were just Morecom. We did not deal with any vendors as the Emergency Communication Committee. Morecom hosted the vendors and spoke to the vendors directly. We stayed out of that.
And this covers the Sheriff's Department as well as fire and fire and EMS?
Yes, ma'am.
Both?
Yes, ma'am. And they have been actively participating in the process on the committee.
So my last question for you, Jason, is what level of urgency would you give this? I mean, obviously you're biased, but...
Biased? Yes, ma'am.
Thing, but what level of urgency are we at?
To give you my honest answer, I've been asking for us to start the movement on this since 2012.
Thank you. I think each one of the board members will be happy to accept this little bit of information here and move forward with the process. Thank you, Keith, for all the time spent.
Thank you so much.
Let's move to our 3:30 public hearing proposal FY22 budget amendment. Mr. Zrillo.
Yes, thank you, once again, Mr. Chairman. This public hearing concerns itself with the need to appropriate funds in FY22 for 3 capital improvement projects. Public hearing, which is required due to the fact the appropriations being requested exceed 1% of the total expenditures of the adopted budget for FY22, was duly advertised on August 18th. The first project is the Munner Sewer Extension Project at Greenfield. The requested budget amendment is $1,009,685 and will cover construction and related expenses. The county will be providing initial funding for the project, and future proceeds from the project's land sale and the utility credit will be applied to the county outlay of funds, thereby resulting in an offset that equates to full coverage of the local county funds outlay. Second capital improvement project involves the construction of an access road to Munters. The requested budget amendment for this project is $644,500, which is the total of the VDOT grant. The amount of the county match is $144,500, which is provided for in the county's FY22 CIP budget. Lastly, the final budget amendment requested is for $247,600. This is for architectural and engineering costs for the Virginia Western Community College expansion project regarding their workforce training center at this location. Beyond these preliminary expenses, there will be construction costs estimated to be $2.6 million, with the anticipation that these costs will be financed with annual revenue from Virginia Western Community College lease payments to be used to support the debt service. Three appropriations total $1,901,245. Therefore, staff recommends as follows. Open the public hearing for the total proposed amendment of $1,901,425. And thereafter, close the public hearing and approve. We recommend approval of the three appropriations. And then there is an added item on here separately for the board to approve the fiscal agreement between Botetourt County and the EDA, which outlines how the $900,000 in the sale proceeds from the land sale would be provided back to Botetourt County. In terms of any additional information related to these projects, John Lanford and Ken McFadden are available for any questions.
Any questions?
Are there any questions?
One question I would have about the Greenfield project here. The lease payments will support the funding of that project. Do we know in what amount? I mean, is it?
The lease payments now are $345,000 a year. So we'll see how well that covers the total amount of the debt service plus interest. Obviously, we don't have that number right now, but we do have a stream of funding that we've received and will apply already from money received last year, and then there's money that we already received in FY22 as well. So we're on our way towards applying these funds towards the future permanent debt.
What's the length of the lease that we currently have with Virginia Western?
20 years. 20 years. 20.
Any further questions? If not, I'll open the public hearing on $1,901,425. Is there anybody here to speak? Questions on this? If not, close the public hearing, and we'll go through each one of these as the first one being an appropriation of the Munter Sewer Extension Project, the amount of $1,909,685. Do I hear a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. B, an appropriation for Munter's Access Road in the amount of $644,500. This CIP, BDOT. Do I hear a motion?
Move to approve.
All in favor? Aye. And then C, an appropriation in the amount of $247,60 to the CIP WCC Workforce Training Center. Motion. I'll second that. All in favor? Aye. Last one is approval of official agreement between Botetourt County and Economic Development Authority, which outlines how the $900,000 sale proceed. Do I hear a motion? So moved. I'll second that. All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If we can move to, and I apologize for the delay here, 345, update on Daleville YMCA. Mr. Johnson, good to see you. One of the things we've had a difficult time is make sure you're in that microphone so that people online.
Well, thank you for having us here today. And, I think these things always start, in our case, with a huge thank you to the Board of Supervisors and the support and the investment that Botetourt County has made in the YMCA project over at Daleville Town Center. Thank you to our volunteers, who I know we have several here today that worked and attended at least 200 meetings, probably over 5 years, to make that process go through and tell our story to the county and to the citizens so that this could become a reality. Mr. Clinton was involved with us, 3 board of supervisors, but spent a lot of time on that. Mr. Alderson, Mr. Williamson in the back row back here. Really it was local people that really made this project happen in this board. I can't talk about anything at Delville Town Center without thanking Karen Waldron and Amy Keller House and just their patience for years and years and years and working through that project and developing that. And then I have staff here today too. I think at one point I maybe said to the board, building a building is hard, but really it's easy compared to keeping the promises we said we would keep in having that building and serving the county past that. So that's my thank yous. In preparation for this, I pulled the actual spreadsheet that I had for last time I spoke with this board and asked for this investment, because I wanted to look at the promises that we made so I could actually speak to those things as we kind of give you a recap of where we are today. Some of the numbers I'll give you, most of them, I'm going to give you our pre-COVID, like right prior to COVID numbers, and then I'll speak a little bit to how COVID has affected the why and kind of where we're coming back on that. So I'll say that for the end. So one of the things I said last time I spoke to you all was that the Y would be more than a gym, and that all we were after this was built and years later was a gymnasium or a place to work out that we failed. And so I'm happy to report we are much, much more than a gym. We have, I'll jump ahead, programming is where our heart is. We've said that all along, and so I thought I would just take you through some pictures of some of the things that go on at the YMCA every day. We have 70 kids right now signed up for a swim team. As part of that program, we have 70 kids in our dance program here in Botetourt. Swim lessons we held leading up to COVID last year, 175 swim classes, where we served about 141 different children over week after week throughout the year. And then other fun programs like Parents Night Out and a variety of other things. So our focus has been on programming and serving families and kids in the community, in addition to wellness and some of those other things. We promised we'd be a partner with the school system and help elevate kids' experiences in the county through that partnership. 2 years ago, we had 302 second graders come through our pools through the Splash Water Safety Program. Child care, right now we have 90 kids signed up for our after school programming. And then we had 11 students that got their PE credits last summer as part of our partnership with the school. And then you'll see teen programming there. We had 14 teens from the Botetourt area participate in the Youth in Government program, which is a statewide program. And the picture you see there was actually, we held a regional event here at the YMCA teaching the process of youth in government and how that works. And so we've had great partnerships with the school that are literally daily in their buildings or having school kids in our buildings, hopefully helping to enrich what the children of Botetourt County, what their experience is day to day. We do health and wellness. Like I said, that's not all we are, but we do a lot of things to help the citizens of Botetourt County be healthier. And I picked a wide variety of pictures here, from kids doing wellness classes to pickup sports that you might think mostly are adults, to pickleball, which serves our seniors, group exercise, which serves a lot of our families. If you've been in the YMCA, that activity is happening every day, all day, and the citizens of Botetourt certainly utilize it heavily. And I do believe the county is and will continue to be healthier because of this resource. Prior to COVID, we had 4,486 members of the YMCA, and the average daily usage was 645 people per day that came through the YMCA. So I feel like I think the investment in those kinds of numbers as far as people that come from all over the county. One of the things we said we really wanted to be was a hub for the county. As we were doing fundraising and we were talking to the different groups of people that might want to be involved, I think one of the things I experienced is it is a huge county and it has people spread out all over the place. And the YMCA really generally does work as a draw to bring people together that maybe more than most other things. So, economic impact. I talked to Andy Kelberhouse the other day, and I know he shared with you guys recently deal with town center's economic impact of the county. And I certainly wouldn't begin to say that the YMCA was some large percentage responsible for that, but the YMCA was early on, a big part of that. I have a picture, and it's not really the groundbreaking I would look at, but it's what's behind it, which is nothing. and that was when the YMCA started, and we started building. And if you stood in that same spot and you canned today, it looks very, very different. And I like to believe that the YMCA being there as a draw was at least an integral part of that growth and the draw for other housing and for the other things that came. When we broke ground, there were 6 homes, now there's 91 homes. When we broke ground, there was 95 apartments, now there's 215. There's 2 restaurants, 2 banks, and as Andy said, much, much more on the way. I guess he's always optimistic about what's next. And so I like to believe we helped at least deliver on that promise. So thank you, because I think the investment, Karen and the Board of Supervisors really was, it's what made this thing athletics and get where it got. So we appreciate that, and we hope that you all see that investment as a positive one for the county as we move forward. COVID, so I'll just give you some straight numbers. When we were closed due to COVID, we were one of the few Ys in the state that chose not to continue to draft members. Some Ys drafted members and sent them thank you letters for their donation. We stopped charging. We felt like that was the right thing to do. When we returned, when we reopened from COVID, we had lost about 30%, and at Dale here, about 30% of our members. So from that 30% of that 4,486 were gone. We knew that would take some time, and as with so many things, for people to get comfortable. As I stand here today, we have about 85% of the membership base that we had when COVID closed us. That recovery is better than most, and so we feel good about that. It's very good movement. Financially, we are stable, and we're able to wait this thing out as everybody gets more comfortable with coming back to public spaces and doing those things. And so program-wise, actually it's a quicker recovery. We are in the 95% range as far as the programs that we offer to the community and how people have those programs have filled back up. And so we're pleased with the response, and we knew we would have to have a lot of patience. I think a big part of that, though, is what we did during, when we were closed. We certainly were not unavailable to the community at Camp Hope. We started child care back long before most places were willing to try to do that, and we felt like there was such need out there that we needed to step in that gap and try and, at least for the essential workers right out of the gate, to get people back to work that needed to be at work. And so I think we're proud that we tried to continue to do the right thing even during what was a really difficult time for a whole lot of people. So with that, I don't know if there's any questions or anything that you all would like to know, but primarily just want to say thank you. We're doing well. We're hanging in there post-COVID, and we're serving the community in all the ways that we have done.
Thank you, Mark. Is there any questions from board members? I do have a comment. I don't know how many years ago, and Mr. Alston and Mr. Williams will be able to know, our first meeting was over at Lawrence Trucking in that room there, and we were trying to figure out, is it even necessary? And when I was a phone call, we went out to it. What a great step we have today. And I think one of the goals that we all are looking for is making sure that every child has an opportunity to be able to save their own life when they're in the water. Because we're around water all over the place. So I think it's served a wonderful, wonderful purpose. Not only for that, but for many, many other things. Even at 5 o'clock in the morning, it's still good. So one of the things that I really want to say, when we were there building this, I went in and take a look at it, and here, and varnish in there, they're having paint put in, they're having the floors put down here, Mark, putting his wood, he had done a lot of woodwork. If you have an opportunity to take a look at the woodwork that he's done, please do. It's some really neat stuff that he did there, and Denise and all around. So thank you so much for the time that you spent putting a team together to support this.
I appreciate that. I remember in that meeting I said, we hope that we go from citizens of Botetourt County saying, I hope we get a Y, to looking back maybe at this point saying, I can't imagine Botetourt County without a Y. And I think for a lot of folks, we're there. So thank you very much for helping make that possible.
Thank you. Thank you for the two individuals right up there too, for being able to support us all too.
Appreciate the opportunity to be here today and speak before you to give you a small synopsis of what 2021 has looked like and a small update from the Parks and Recreation Commission perspective. A couple of line items here. Line item number 1, new personnel in the Parks and Recreation Department. At the beginning of this